This is an Emmaljunga Classic chassis, and today we're going to address the problem whereby it feels as though the stroller steers to one side, either the left or the right, as you travel on long distances. So, in order to fix this problem, you're going to want to check a few things first. You're going to want to check that none of these hinges are overly looser than any of the rest. Just to identify that the problem does not lie with the hinges. If you are tightening these, you don't want to tighten it too tight either. It needs to be tight and sturdy, but if you tighten it too much, you can develop creaking problems, some noise issues with your stroller, and it also simply won't function the way it's supposed to. The other thing you're going to want to check is the rivets, in particular these two here, as well as these here. And the way you're going to do that is simply fold down the stroller and make sure that it folds down easily, looking that it's symmetrical on both sides. And most importantly, when you fold it up, that both sides click into place quickly. Very often when there's a problem with the rivet, it's on this side, and you'll notice that mostly because the safety latch here will prevent it from snapping back correctly when those little plastic washers get misaligned. So, assuming that it's not, that the problem with the stroller steering to one side does not have to do with misalignment or loose or damaged elements in the overall chassis, which would thus, when you put weight on the stroller, cause it to lean to one side. As long as it's not that, it means that the axles that the wheels are on have become bent. So, it's very difficult to easily assess which axle is actually damaged. So we're not going to address the problem by finding the exact axle that's bent unless it's very obvious. Instead, we are simply going to bend the axles and test the stroller while driving it. And the bending is very slight. We're not talking about noticeable bending. What you're going to need for this is two things. You're going to need some sort of a bar. It needs to be relatively sturdy. The hole needs to be not too wide. And it should be a little bit long because that helps with the amount of leverage you get as you're bending the axle. And the second thing you're going to need is a long stretch of flat pavement in order to test the stroller on. And now when I say flat, the reason for this is if the pavement is at an angle, the stroller is at an angle, which might cause it to steer to one side. And one way in order to test, even if the pavement is not entirely flat, is of course to take it both directions. So, what we're going to essentially start doing then is to roll the stroller down the test track. Roll the stroller down the test track, preferably holding in the center of the handle or just barely holding it. See if it wheels to the left or the right. And you'll need a longer stretch than what I'm using here. Then you're going to turn the stroller around and roll it back the other way on the test track. And then see. Now the reason for going both ways again is because your test track most likely is not entirely flat. And so if you notice that you have to continuously adjust to the right in order to get it to go straight or to the left, then you'll notice that in both directions. It's always veering to the left or it's always veering to the right. Now, after you've ascertained which direction it's steering, you're going to want to turn the stroller on its side. And I usually do this with the front axles. You're going to want to slightly bend the axle in the opposite direction, and you just got to use your logic here. So if my stroller is turning to the left, then on this side of the stroller, I'm going to want to bend the axle this way. If it is veering to the right, then I'm going to want to bend it this way. You just got to think about how it's going to adjust the angle of the wheel. And you can, of course, do both axles. You're just going to put your bar on and apply pressure, and you're just going to want to slightly bend it. Just slightly. It will be very difficult actually to see how much you've bent it looking at it. You bend too far, you break your axle. So just slightly. Now of course, you're going to want to roll it on your test track again and see if it's still veering to the same side, if it's begun to veer to the opposite side, or if it is okay. And I've never had this thoroughly fixed on the first pass. So you then run your test track, flip it on its side, and bend again. Again, I think the front axles have slightly more effect than the back axles. They kind of lead the stroller where it's going. So bending a little bit as you need in order to get the stroller until it can be driven along your test track where you're not having to correct the direction of the stroller, preferably just holding in the middle, maybe with a finger or two, and run straight. And then you'll know that you have now realigned the chassis such that it will drive straight. Again, not exactly fixing whatever has caused this problem, which axle is actually bent, because it's very fine adjustment that has occurred over time to your stroller, causing it to have a problem. But this is how you correct the problem in the end. So that's how you fix an Emmaljunga Classic stroller that steers to one side. I am specifying Emmaljunga Classic because it's all entirely made of metal here, and if you do this with other four-wheel strollers, very often there are large plastic joints that hold the lower axle in place, and these can crack if you start bending the axles. So the stroller that I fix this problem with this method on is the Emmaljunga Classic. In any case, we hope this video has been helpful. If it has been, we ask you to subscribe, as it helps us continue making videos in the future. Thank you.